We are continuing our exploration of the English translation of the New Testament. In our previous video, we have asked a series of questions, and now we're going to try to delve into those different questions and try to provide some answers to those questions. And the first question today we're going to address is, how does the King James Version compare with the NIV? And if you recall, the King James Version is based on what we call the majority text of the Greek New Testament or the Byzantine type text. Whereas the NIV, which is based on the Alexandrian text or what we call the minority text. And the ESV, the New American Standard Bible, the New Revised Standard Version, they're all based on the Alexandrian text. And we'll be comparing them with the King James Version by looking at a couple of verses. And today we will look at two verses from the Gospel of Matthew. Let's take a look at first Matthew chapter 17. You will notice that verse 21 is missing from most of these modern version, English version of the New Testament. And we can look at the screen and see where those differences are by just looking at this website called stepbible.org. And you can see here the Gospel of Matthew chapter 17. It has verse 20, then it jumped to verse 22. So the ESV, the NASB, the NIV, all of them do not contain verse 21. But the King James Version does include, as you can see here, does include the verse 21, which is actually telling us here, how be it, this kind goes not out but by prayer and fasting. So let's read actually from verse 19. It said, then came the disciple to Jesus apart and said, why could not we cast him out? So basically there was some man whose son was demon possessed, and he came to the disciples so his son can be healed, but they could not heal him. Now they came to Jesus and asked him why. Verse 20, Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, so from here to there, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Verse 21, which is missing in modern versions of the Bible, how be it, this kind goes not out but by prayer and fasting. In other words, Jesus Christ is saying the reason why you were not able to cast out those demons because of your unbelief. And here we're talking about not about the amount of faith, but the type of faith you have. You just need a little bit of that for God to unveil some miracle in your life. So basically he's asking us to lean upon him. The more you depend upon God, the more you rely upon God, the more amazing thing he will do in your life. And that shows how much faith and trust you have in God. But that verse is missing from this modern version. And by the way, the King James Version is a formal equivalence translation, which means a literal translation, whereas the NIV, for instance, is more of a dynamic equivalence translation. I know we talked about last time some Alexandrian type based English translation are also literal. So, but again, they're not including this verse in their translation of the New Testament. Now, if we go back to the PowerPoint presentation, we will see here, even though 99% of the Greek manuscript of the Gospel of Matthew that we are in possession with of today contain verse 21. Second, Codex D, which is called Codex Beza, is dated around 400 AD, yet it contained verse 21, but these modern versions are not including verse 21 into their translation. We wonder, even if the oldest extant Greek manuscript that we are in possession and upon which they base their translation, which are the Codex Vaticanus, which is dated around 350 AD, and the Codex Vaticanus around 300 to 330, and the Codex Sinaiticus around 350 AD, so around the same time as Codex D, yet they are not including it in their English translation. We also have another witness, Codex W, which is Washingtonianus, which is dated between the 4th and 5th century, meaning around between 300 and 400 AD, yet the modern version of the Bible don't include it. And we look at the King James, New King James, it has the same similar translation as the King James, and some additional evidence that we can put forward. Matthew 17 verse 21 is also supported by most old Latin copy of the Gospel of Matthew, and also the Latin Vulgate, which was translated by Jerome around 382 AD. So this is also around the same time as the oldest extant Greek manuscript that we have, yet it contained verse 21. And the Origen also has cited verse 21, and he died around 250 AD, before the Vaticanus and the Sinaiticus copy are existent. Again, we also have 5 church fathers who all cited verse 21. And notice that all these church fathers are coming from different parts of the Roman Empire. Okay? Not just from Alexandria or from other parts, but from different parts, which is adding to the testimony of the reliability of verse 21 as part of the Gospel of Matthew. You have, for instance, Basil the Great, who was from Turkey, and he died around 379, and he was using this verse 21. He cited, which means he was using a Greek manuscript which is based on the majority text. We have also Saint Chrysostom from Syria, who also died around 407. He also cited verse 21. Saint Ambrose from Italy died around 397. Saint Hilary from France, he died around 367. And then the great theologian Saint Augustine from North Africa, who died around 430. So it's all around the same time as the Codex Vaticanus and the Codex Sinaiticus, which these translators of modern versions such as the NIV, the ESV, the NASB, and the NRSV are using. Okay, so this is the first verse we wanted to take a look at. Now let's look at another verse of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18 now this time, and verse 11. You will notice here that verse 11 is missing in the NIV and the ESV, NASB, and NRSV. Okay, whereas it is in the King James Version. And the evidence is pointing to the fact that the vast majority of extant Greek manuscript of the Gospel of Matthew include this verse. Okay, I'm going to read it in a second. We also have Codex D, we talked about earlier, Codex Beza, which is dated around 400 AD, also contain this verse 11. It is supported by the Vulgate, 380 AD, and the Peshitta, which is the translation of the Bible in Syriac or Aramaic language, around 400 AD. All these manuscripts are actually around the same time as the oldest extant Greek manuscript of the New Testament. Verse 11, this is what it says, verse 10 first. Take heed, Jesus Christ speaking, that ye despise not one of these little ones. For I say unto you, that in heaven their angel do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. For the Son of Man is come to save that which was lost. So that's what is missing in most of these modern versions of the Bible. And the question is, why are they missing this passage in their translation of the New Testament? Now, the main reason that is being cited by these scholars is the age of the manuscript, because they say the closer the manuscript is to the date of the original writing, the more reliable they are. So we're going to try to address that statement and see whether it fit the evidence, the fact that we have throughout the transmission of the New Testament text. Okay, so another church father, which is Saint Chrysostom, has also cited verse 11. So which means he was also using a source that include this, which is consistent with the majority text. Okay, which these scholars are claiming they came much later, but we still do have witnesses around the time of the Codex Vaticanus and the Codex Sinaiticus. Now, 4 reasons we can put forward to show that, actually 3 main reasons, to show that the assumption of the oldest manuscript being the most accurate does not seem to be supported by the evidence. The first reason is in the Gospel. When you look at the Gospel and you take Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus, which these translators use for modern version of the Bible, they disagree with each other 3,036 times, only in the Gospel. So which means one of these Greek manuscript is not accurate, yet they are using these 2 manuscripts basically as the base text for their English translation, whether it's the NIV, the ESV, the NASB, or the NRSV. Okay, so that first argument. The second argument against the assumption of the age of the manuscript, Codex Beza, which we cited earlier, which is Codex D, is almost as old as Vaticanus and Sinaiticus because it's dated around 400 AD, yet expert scholars are telling us that the text of the Gospel is less accurate than the text in a typical medieval Gospel manuscript, which are of the Byzantine type, which we retrieve many of them during the medieval era. So then it's older than these medieval Byzantine Gospel manuscript. Okay, yet it's less accurate. So accuracy does not necessarily has to do with the age of a manuscript. And the last argument we can point out, if we take papyri, we have multiple papyri that are dated way before the Vaticanus or the Sinaiticus. Okay, here the editor of the Nessel and Allen text, which is based on the Alexandrian Greek manuscript of the New Testament, they reject all the reading of this papyrus 46. Okay, yet this is older than Vaticanus and Sinaiticus. Again, you cannot simply use the age reason as a main factor driving the accuracy of a text and proving that this text is closer to the original. With these 3 arguments, I'm going to stop here, and we're going to come back to a few more examples in the Gospels which compare the King James translation and this modern version translation, and to see which one is supported by a greater amount of evidence. Okay, remember, we have over 90 to 95% of all the extant Greek manuscripts are part of what we call the Byzantine type text or the majority type text upon which the King James was translated. I'm going to stop here. Thank you for your attention. Stay tuned. We have more example to share with you in the coming video.